This video essay applies Stuart Hall's encoding-decoding model to the narrative of Until Dawn, showing how every player choice is both packaged by developers and actively interpreted by players. In the first half, we'll explain Hall's model, how creators encode messages, how audience decode them, and the three possible reading positions: accepting, adapting, or opposing. In the second half, we'll examine 4 key moments in Until Dawn: the prologue's butterfly effect warning, the run versus hide chase, the flare gun decision, Dr. Hill's therapy questions, and the squirrel shooting, to demonstrate how players' backgrounds, beliefs, and playstyles produce dominant, negotiated, or oppositional readings. Until Dawn is an interactive horror game in which every binary choice can mean life or death for its 8 characters. Rather than passively following a preset story, players constantly interpret prompts through their own experiences and values. Stuart Hall's essay, Encoding and Decoding in the Television Discourse in 1980, reframes media not as a one-way transmission, but as a circuit of production, circulation, consumption, and reproduction, with 2 pivotal determinant moments, encoding and decoding. We'll first unpack Hall's model, then dive into concrete examples from Until Dawn to show how different players decode the same prompts very differently. Part 1. Hall's encoding-decoding model. Encoding is how creators package ideas through dialogue, images, sound, and design into a form intended to convey a specific meaning. Decoding is how audiences unpack those signs using their own knowledge, beliefs, and cultural background to make sense of them. Let's say there's a game trailer showing this lone, rugged male hero walking through a post-apocalyptic world protecting a child. The developers might be trying to push a message about sacrifice, strength, and fatherhood. That's the encoded meaning. But depending on who's watching it, the decoded message might change. One player might go, "Wow, what a powerful story about parenthood," while someone else might see it and think, "Oh, cool, another middle-aged man with a gun. Haven't seen that before." Stuart Hall calls these the determinant moments, as meaning is both shaped at encoding and reshaped at decoding at these points. Now let's discuss the 4 stages of media communication. Hall expands the simple sender, message, receiver loop into 4 phases, each influencing how meaning is created and shared. The first stage is production. Creators draw on social ideas, technical skills, and industry norms to build the message. Next is circulation. The message travels via its medium, whether that's a TV broadcast, a film, or a video game, and takes shape in that form. Thirdly is consumption. Audiences encounter and interpret the message, bringing in their personal memories, values, and cultural beliefs. And then lastly, reproduction. The viewers share, act on, and discuss their interpretations, which then feeds back into the first stage, production. Now that we understand the 4 stages of media communication, let's touch base on the 3 decoding positions Hall discusses. Depending on their background and beliefs, audiences decode messages in these 3 ways, according to Stuart Hall. Our first is accepting, or dominant hegemonic. Audiences take the message exactly as intended by the producer. Next, we have adapting, or negotiated. Audiences accept some parts while tweaking others to fit their personal viewpoints. And lastly, we have opposing, or oppositional. Audiences understand the intended meaning from the producer, but they'll reject it completely. The decoding position a person will use depends on their cultural beliefs, lived experience, and personal values. Part 2. Applying the model to Until Dawn. Until Dawn opens with the butterfly effect prologue text. A tiny butterfly flapping its wings today may lead to a devastating hurricane weeks from now. The smallest decision can dramatically change the future. What a daunting message. See what I did there? No? Okay. This text reveals to the players to consider the weight of each choice, but it also encodes an expectation that players will have to actively interpret these choices rather than just simply reacting on a whim. Now let's discuss some examples in Until Dawn using Hall's 3 decoding positions. Let's start with example 1, the run versus hide scene in Chapter 5. A frequent type of decision in Until Dawn is the classic run or hide choice. Do you keep running, or do you duck into a hiding spot and hope that they don't find you? Now, the game doesn't tell you what's right or wrong here, but it's just presenting the scenario. That's the encoded message from the developers. There's tension, urgency, survival instincts, but how players decode that moment really depends on who you are. Someone who's more impulsive might hit run without thinking, while another player might be cautious and choose to hide. And someone with experience in horror games or films might even recognize a pattern. Maybe hiding usually leads to safety. Stuart Hall's theory helps explain how these choices feel different depending on what each player brings to the game. There's no universal reaction, it's filtered through personal instincts, past experiences, and even fear tolerance. Now, specifically in this scene, the character Sam is being chased by the Psycho and she has to choose run or hide. A dominant hegemonic perspective would suggest that the hide option be the safest, because horror movie logic usually says that staying still avoids detection. Whereas an oppositional perspective would see players deliberately run, seeking the thrill of the chase over Sam's safety. Example 2. Who keeps the flare gun? In Chapter 6, Emily climbs up the fire tower and finds a flare gun in a locked box. You get to choose, keep it for Emily or give it to Matt. The developers are encoding this moment as a test of trust and protection. How you decode that choice depends on your own instinct and biases. Maybe you've been role-playing Emily as the badass tough survivor, so you keep it with her. That would be a dominant reading. Or maybe you've grown attached to Matt's good guy vibe and decide he needs it more, a negotiated reading. Certain players also just favour a character over another, so of course you're going to give it to your favourite. Hall's model shows us that the same prompt, a simple "who holds the flare gun," can lead to a totally different meaning in each player's head, based on their personal experiences and values. Example 3, Dr. Hill's therapy questions. In between chapters in Until Dawn, players sit through these odd and eerie therapy sessions with Dr. Hill. At first you really don't know what's going on, and you're asked to answer these strange personal questions. What scares you more, snakes or spiders? Are you afraid of clowns or scarecrows? The encoded message here is really clever. The developers are literally customizing the horror experience based on your fears, but how you decode those questions says a lot about you too. Now, he specifically asks you,
which image in each set makes you the most anxious?
Are you answering these questions as if he's talking to you personally and breaking that fourth wall? This is what the developers are intending. They want you to answer these questions as if they're your own. Or are you aware of the game's manipulation and understand that these questions are most likely tailoring future scares? We would see this as an oppositional reading, as you acknowledge the developer's intentions but you're choosing to ignore it. Example 4, shooting the squirrel. Another early example is when Chris finds a gun and spots a squirrel. The game gives you the option to shoot it, or not. It seems simple, but Hall's encoding and decoding model helps us understand why players might make different choices. The developers likely encoded this scene to test the player's impulsiveness or morality, a harmless prank, or a needless act of violence. Some people literally might say, it's a video game, so why not? A player who grew up around hunting might see it as no big deal, but someone else might feel uncomfortable and it might not even cross their mind to shoot the squirrel. This is what Hall is discussing. He talks about how people's backgrounds shape how they read and react to what's being shown. Now, spoiler alert, if you do decide to shoot the squirrel, in classic Until Dawn fashion, this causes Sam to be attacked by a crow and she starts to bleed from her head. And as discussed in our first example, if you choose to hide with Sam, you have a 100% chance of being caught because the Psycho follows the trail of blood coming from Sam's head. So make that decision wisely. Stuart Hall's encoding and decoding model shows us that games aren't just things we watch or play through. They're more like a conversation between the player and the game, where both sides help shape what it all means. In Until Dawn, developers encode tension, survival logic, and moral cues into every prompt, but players decode these cues in diverse ways, some accepting the intended design, others adapting it, and still others rejecting it outright. But that's the beauty of narrative-driven games, where your decisions shape the outcome. Everyone plays with their own set of beliefs, instincts, and priorities. By looking at the butterfly effect prologue, the run versus hide choice, the flare gun decision, the therapy questions, and the squirrel incident through Hall's 3 decoding positions, we can see that player choice isn't just about pressing buttons. It's about how players create their own meaning in the story. Even a horror game like Until Dawn invites deep, personal reactions based on who's playing.